All right, so we've got the box generally laid out for one side. This would be the sends and returns in one DC port. And I'm going to go ahead now and drill these and install the jacks and then lay out what else is going on inside there to make sure that I don't have interference. And I think that's probably a good way of doing it, considering how small this box is and how much equipment we actually need to shove in here. So I'm starting off just with a simple 16th inch bit. I've laid out the jacks using the ruler to make sure that they look right for one another, that there's some sort of grid, that they're equally and evenly spaced so that it has a professional look. If you use a ruler while you're laying everything out, if you're careful about maintaining your lines to be square to the edges of the case, using, you know, what we had talked about before, using your squares and then using rulers, your equipment will always look professional. It won't look, you know, homemade. It'll look like it was factory built. So I always recommend using, you know, squares, rulers, punches, things that assist you in being accurate. That way, you know, you can have a little bit of a satisfaction when you look at your gear. You know, we spend a lot of time putting all this stuff together. It should look good as well as perform good. So, and a little bit of a handmade look to it is nice as well, you know. These boxes being, you know, bare aluminum, not painted. You can choose to paint them or leave them blank. I like the look of a blank, sort of bare aluminum tumbled finish. I think it has a sort of mil-spec look to it, reminiscent of, you know, other interesting pieces of equipment like Pete Cornish gear that I'm a fan of and things like that. So now I'm using, this is a Unibit. I should show that to you. This is available at the home centers and it's a stepped drill bit. We've talked about these before, and it allows you to drill holes of varying sizes without changing out, you know, your bits. It also creates a truly round hole, whereas if you were to use, let's say, like a regular high-speed drill bit, they tend to make an oval hole if you're not using a drill press. So if you're doing it by hand, get yourself a Unibit. They're well worth it. And you can see how easily they kind of go through there, and you can count as to how many steps you need to go to get to the depth or get to the width that you're looking for. In my case, I think it's 9. I wasn't counting there, so I gotta do this. I think we gotta open it up one more step. That should do it. Correct. All right, so we're gonna count on these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me just make sure that's 9. Oh, 8. I think we used a larger than 1/8 inch bit as the pilot. All right, so 8 is the number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then the last one. Okay, so there we have all the holes for the jacks drilled, right? That's good. Get a quick vacuum of the chips. Keep our workbench neat. Okay, the next thing to open up for would be for the DC port, and I believe that is pretty much all the way through 1/2 inch. stop at 10 just to make sure. Stop at 11 just to make sure. Yeah, they're half. All the way through. And that should drop in. Yep, there we go. Okay, so we have all that done. I'll quickly vacuum off the table real quick. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put in a few of the jacks that would cause or have the most likelihood of interfering with another component. So those will be on the edges here, and they would most likely interfere with the input and output of the box itself, which would be on the sides, as well as the stomp switches, right? So you don't have to install everything. You can if you want. But I just do this so I can sort of look to see where I'm going to put the next set of jacks. So I can see on the inside here where they're supposed to be. I got this backwards. It's been a long day, I apologize. It's a little bit in the evening when we get to have our fun, but sometimes our brain ain't working so well anymore. But there we go. Good. Alright, so now the next, like we were talking about, would be to put the jacks in on the side. And you can see that if you were to put them in the wrong place, you would have an issue. So I'm going to go ahead also and put in a one of our connectors just to make sure that that's its largest footprint is when a connector is in there. It kind of spreads everything out a bit. So we're going to go ahead now and mark for where we want the ins and outs. So I would say, yeah, right around here is probably good. So I'm going to go ahead and mark on the side of the case. Right. I'm going to take our square and draw that in. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And to save a little time, I'll just take the square basically and line it up here like so, and I'll just draw on the metal itself with my pen, and then I'll flip it over. That way I'll have our jack in the same place on the opposite side. Go ahead and draw down the line. Okay. And we'll just double check. Looks like we'll have good clearance there. So I think those two will go here and here. And that'll give us enough room to install the rest of the gear. Now, in this case, I'm probably going to try to make them go up as high as possible to the top of the case, which would allow me to possibly scoot this board underneath, right? Or I'd put it in the middle perhaps, right? And then put the stomps on either side. So let's check on that, how that'll all fit together. Put in our two stomp switches, right? Maybe put in this as well. So this is a little bit low. Our DC jack. These crickets are making me sleepy. Okay. Maybe put in our board. Orientate our board in there, right? It's probably how it's going to end up being. Then we can put our jack, or rather our stomp switch, like here and here, and then we can check to see if that'll allow us room for our jack right on the side here. So it's a bit tight, right? What if we were to move it this way? All right, let's look at that. Is there room to go in like this? And I think we're good where we were before, but let's cheat it as far up as we can towards the top of the case. So let's say something like that. And that's where we want to drill our hole. I'm going to do the same thing as I did in terms of getting the same depth on either side of the box. Okay. Chuck in our 1/8 inch, or excuse me, 16th inch bit. And then we could go ahead and drill through the aluminum. When you're doing this work too, I'd also say if you're at the store buying drill bits, get yourself like 3 or 4 of these 16th inch bits, because they do tend to break. They get hardened, they get stuck, they get galled, and then they break. So get a couple more than you think you need, and keep them around. I'm going to widen out the pilot now. There we go. Now we'll chuck in the unibit. Okay. Make sure we got it fit correctly. Yep. Go in this side. Good. Okay, get out our vacuum. And we can go ahead and install these 2 jacks. Right on the side, the input and the output of our loop box, our 2 loop box with buffer included. Now on the buffer, I should say a little bit about that. The Orman buffer allows you to build it 2 different ways, with a JFET or with an IC, like an op amp, like a 741 op amp. I prefer to use the JFET. I get good results with the JFET. So if you're going to build this and you care what I think, the JFET I would say would be the way to go. Okay, so now we're going to see where everything else is looking like. So put this buffer unit back down in there. Right. And we can even put the unit on top of the, if it becomes a tight squeeze, you know, you could even basically glue it to the back of the panel as well, double stick tape it and put it in that way if it becomes a little bit of an issue of squeezing it all in here. So we're going to install the other 2 jacks. All right. These are our sends, obviously, and returns for the phase and flange. There we go. Now we can decide how we want our buffer to go in. Excuse me, our stomp switch. I am getting tired, I have to say. All right. I think that's probably going to be right about there. So I'm just going to kind of draw on the inside of the box where I want it. Okay, so that looks like right there where we're going to put our pilot hole. And then we'll go from the top and measure the same thing from the other side. And if we're not completely goofy, it should work just fine. So to do that, let's go ahead and draw us a line here. Right? That's from that end. Okay. Right? And then we're going to get the distance this way. There we go. And that's a pretty easy way of getting your hole in the same place on the other side. All right? And we can pilot it out a little bit bigger. Change out our unibit. And this one I'm pretty sure is all the way through 1/2 inch. Stop there real quick just to make sure it's not one shy. That was good. Right there. Okay. So we'll drill this one out next. Wipe off our chips. Bang it out. Move our bits out of the way so we don't vacuum them up right here when we're going to clean off the table again. And if you're doing this at home for yourself, it's a good idea to have the vacuum close by so that way your significant other, when they see you making a mess but you have the vacuum out already, brings a smile to their face. So I recommend that. So now let's go ahead and drop in perfect. Right? Sneak that in there. So a little bit of planning goes a long way when you're doing this kind of stuff, right? So you don't end up wrecking everything that you're making. Let's orientate this the same way as the other one, right? There we go. All right, so there we have our double loop box, right? All the necessary gears in there. Now for this, let's see if we can get that in there. Looks like we're gonna have to ride it on top, which is fine. And another thing you can do is you can encase this entire unit in a piece of heat shrink. and just lay it in, right? So we could lay it in here like this, right? So when you, kind of like MXR used to do with the Phase 90s and flangers, they were just laid in there. And when you put the case on it, obviously nothing's going anywhere. And this is what our unit will look like. So we'll have a send and return, our DC in, our input or output. We still have to put in our DC. Actually, this will be the auxiliary out to the flanger. So we're going to put one more DC jack in. And I think we're going to put it, let's put it here, because on our board, we're going to route sort of the cables, power cable to this side. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that out for the other DC jack, which we should have around here unless I vacuumed it up. Nope, we got it here. But it's not like I haven't vacuumed up things that I needed before, but they're in the vacuum and you can find them again, so it's not the end of the world. So let's make sure that we've got plenty of room for the port as well as the tabs not to run into anything. So we're probably going to go right here, right? That looks good right there. Go ahead and run our square on it, right? And then we can put it at the same depth as the input jack or output jack in this case is. So we've still got that mark on the square, so I'm going to go ahead and just mark that in. There we have it. So that'll be our DC input. So let's get our drill again. Bit. Yep, okay. Drill through. Open it up a little bit to help the unibit get in. Right. Now I'm going to remove this jack here, as the unibit might slam into it and mess up the jack. No point in destroying the jack. So we're going to have to remove both of these, which is fine. It's not like we don't have to take them out to build the thing anyway. Right, so load up our unibit and go ahead and go all the way through. Let's take a look. Yep, looks good. Make sure we're not contacting anything we won't. There we go. So that should be it for the drill. Okay, so we can put in our port. All right, here we have that. Sometimes you end up with a procedure for reassembly, as in this will go first, this will go second, this will go third, in order to get everything in there without something getting in the way. But so far it looks like we've escaped any of those issues. Right? Just kind of got it done. All right, so this is basically it. So the power will come in here. We'll have a power out here to power the flanger. We'll have our momentary switches to bring in what's in the two loops, an input and output, send and return, and it'll sit on the box. and you'll be able to get in and out of your 2 pedals very quickly. So I think we'll leave it here for tonight. I'm going to eat my dinner and head off to sleep. And tomorrow, after work, we'll be back, more than likely, and we'll go over the circuit, which we've drawn out here, of exactly how you wire this up. And we'll continue on with the project. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.